Hey. Welcome, you guys. Me and Anastasia
Welcome.
Johnson want to welcome you guys to our town hall about Truth About Charter Town Hall. My name is Ken Kemp,
I'm Anastasia Johnson.
and we just want to say thank you guys for coming for a very impactful and a very informational session that me and my friend Anastasia Johnson, we've been in education for some years, and we've been talking about some things that have been, concerning us and things that we have heard. And so over lunch one day, we were talking and we came up with an idea of a town hall. So here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, so Ken and I have been have worked together for over 5 years. And over the course of that time, we have just had a lot of conversations about charter schools. We both worked at a charter school. My entire career, with the exception of 1 year, has been in charter schools. And so we have a lot of perspective. And so we felt like it was really appropriate to bring some heavy hitters into the room and to have a conversation with parents, with teachers, with students. Okay, and then also with leaders in the charter space, just to learn more about the inner workings of charter schools. So we're super excited to be here, and we are pumped that you guys are here with us.
Exactly. And like Anastasia stated that, we've worked in the charter school with multiple positions, and we've heard the misinformation that's out there, right? And I think, sometimes, Anastasia, there could be a taboo around the word charter schools, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that we understand what charter schools are supposed to look like, the good, bad, and the ugly, right? Because with anything, nothing's 100% perfect. And so we are very transparent, and we want to make sure that we can advocate for those who attend charter schools, to empower those parents, stakeholders, families as well, and also to give you guys some nuggets of new charter schools that are opening in fall of 2023.
Yes.
So this is going to be a great panel of, like Anastasia stated, some heavy hitters that we know personally that have been in different sectors throughout the charter school space. And so what you hear are going to be straight FACTS facts.
Exactly. Listen, we are all about honesty. We are all about transparency, and we are advocates for good charter schools. Okay. And so today, the conversation that we're going to have is going to be just that. It's going to be the FACTS and the truth about charter. So we're excited. I see Monica's in the building. Dana's in the building. We're so excited to have you guys here with us tonight.
Exactly. And so, guys, me and Anastasia, we plan on having, more future events like this, such as this. And so we do want to put out a survey that we have. And so one thing about this survey, as you can see, is at the bottom. It'll also be in the chat form that you can click on it with YouTube and Facebook. But fill out the survey. We need to hear back from you guys to see if what we're doing, or if our concerns or your concerns, and that we are addressing what you guys really want to know. Also, with that survey, a lucky winner will get a $50 gift card. So it's a little money behind it.
A little incentive, a little money for all your hard work. Listen, we want to hear from you. What Ken and I have in our heart doesn't matter if it doesn't match what you need. And so it's really important that you guys fill out that survey. Let us know how tonight is going. Let us know what you want to see from us in the future, because we are here for you.
And also, happy Teacher Appreciation Week, right? And so Thank you to all the teachers that's out there that's doing the job. We know that the pay isn't what it should be. Facts, right? But you guys have the passion behind it. And without you guys, I mean, where would this world be? Every job started with a teacher. And so we just want to say happy Teacher Appreciation. And also it's happy
National Charter School Week. Yes. So for the charter families, the charter leaders, the charter teachers, and most importantly, the charter students that might be tuned in, we want to say happy National Charter Week to you. We know that charter schools have a unique opportunity to provide innovation, which we'll get into a little bit later. And there's also some unique challenges that come with charter schools as well sometimes. So we are so excited that you guys are here. We want to celebrate you. Like I said, Ken and I are both charter advocates and charter staff, and so we know firsthand what it's like to work at charter school. And so you want to say happy National Charter School Week as well.
So I know you guys think, them some good looking guys, right? But it's all about the panel. And so that is what we want to transition to next, is the panel that we have. Anastasia, one thing I noticed when, on the flyer that we have, all of our panelists are the pictures with their arms crossed, like they mean business, right? And I was like,
yes, they serious about it.
They serious about it. In our pictures, we like kind of suave with
I know, we're like, That's the host picture, okay? The panel picture and the host picture.
Okay, two separate pictures, all right.
So we can get our serious picture on.
That part. So we are super excited about the panel that we have. And so we first want to introduce Miss Alicia Thomas Searcy.
Yes.
Welcome, Miss Alicia. How are you?
Hey, Alicia.
Hello, I'm wonderful. How are y'all?
We're doing great.
Well. So, we just want to ask you, what space do you occupy? First of all, thank you for being on our panel. We are very thankful and grateful for your time and expertise. But what space do you occupy in the education space right now? And what's your passion behind education?
Sure. I think it's also important for me to mention a little bit of my history. For those that may not know, I'm a former state legislator. I spent 12 years in the Georgia House and spent most of that time working on education. Although people like to believe that all I did was charter schools, I worked on a number of other issues. But also in terms of my history, and it's important to note, in 2012, when we passed the charter amendment, I was one of the co-sponsors of the constitutional amendment, as well as the enabling law. So you can call me an auntie of charter schools, if you will, in Georgia. And interestingly, quick story, when I went to the well to give my speech, to get the bill passed and the constitutional amendment passed, the title of my speech was "The Little Girls in Green Jackets." I've been so blown away by the work that Nina Gilbert and others were doing at Ivy Prep schools. It's one of the reasons why I became a supporter of public charters. And so I just thought about those girls as I was making my speech and thinking about the impact that that particular school, at the time it was just one school, had on the lives of those young ladies. Not knowing that just a few years later, several schools later, I would be the superintendent of the Ivy Prep Schools network. So my role in education and in charter schools in particular has been as a policymaker, as a former ED/superintendent, a charter parent, and an advocate. And so your second question about what gets me passionate about education, one of the things that makes me particularly passionate about school choice and parent choice is that I'm a product of public school choice. I grew up in Florida. My parents decided that the school that I was zoned to go to wasn't going to work for my brother and I. And so they exercised some choice, and I went to a school that was across town. And because of that, and because of going to performing arts middle and high schools, I am where I am today. And so I believe very strongly that public school choice, charter schools, parents having options, and believing in equity, that all of those things level the playing field and make sure that every kid, regardless of their zip code, has access to a high quality public education.
Wow. I mean, hey, the auntie of charter schools.
Yes. Trademark it right now.
At that point. Well, we welcome you, Alicia, and thank you for your expertise in the many hats that you wear that's going to be of use within our panel. The second panelist we would like to invite is Mr. Rashawn Kemp. How you doing, Mr. Rashawn?
Hey, Rashawn.
Good evening. Good evening.
So thank you for your time and being here this evening. And so could you give us a little background about yourself and also answer the questions of what space do you occupy right now in the education space, and why are you passionate about education?
Yeah, I guess if we keep with the theme, since Alicia is the auntie, I'm going to say I'm the brother or cousin of the charter schools here in Georgia. Yes. Coincidentally enough, Alicia was one of the first legislators I met when I moved to Georgia from Ohio. So I'm originally from Ohio, where I was a teacher. I've been a principal of a high school, a dropout prevention high school, where I was a founding staff member. And when I came down here to Georgia, I actually worked with the Georgia Charter Schools Association and joined them right after the charter school amendment was passed. And I was one of the advocates. I was working to get that piece of legislation passed. And as luck will have it, I now serve as the board chair of Ivy Preparatory Academy. I have been a teacher and a principal, and also a legislative government affairs employee at the Georgia Charter Schools Association, and even an authorizer in Ohio, where I led the Ohio Department of Education's community school office. So all of my years in my professional career have been in education. I am super passionate about education and currently work for the National Charter Collaborative, which is a national organization that supports single site schools led by leaders of color across the country. And it kind of speaks to my passion for education. As a young Black boy who was raised by my great grandmother, education truly was the thing that unlocked enormous amount of opportunities for me. Being able to be down at the Gold Dome and work on legislation, and even just most recently to run for office. Had it not been for education, I wouldn't have been able to do any of those things. So I'm very passionate about making sure that all kids like me have the opportunity to have a quality education, and public charter schools, I believe, are just one of those things, but an important piece of those options that are given to children across the country.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rashawn.
Wow. And I have the distinct pleasure of announcing Ms. Tori Jackson Hines, who is a force, a charter school leader,
Yes,
one of
she
the top
is.
charter schools, if not the top charter school in South Fulton County. So please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, and what's your passion as relates to education.
Well, first and foremost, it is such a privilege to just share this panel with just folks who have done incredible work to allow Resurgence Hall to do our incredible work. So I'm Tori Hines. Similar to Rashawn, I started as a teacher. That is my passion. That is my purpose. But I know that teachers can only unleash their excellence when they have schools that provide them with the support to do so. And so Resurgence Hall was really born to allow teachers and children to just be their best selves. And I have had just the ultimate privilege of leading this work now, going on 7 years. And, it's quite simple. We just deeply believe all children deserve to grow into their best and brightest self. And we know that you have to have a sound education in order to do so. And so our mission is just to deliver on an excellent education every day. And it is just the ultimate privilege to be part of that.
Yeah. Listen, I can't let you slide. We have the auntie of charter schools. We have the brother of charter schools. So who are you in the family?
I'm just the baby cousin, baby
cousin.
Okay. They're killing it, by the way.
Riding on the wave of the auntie clearing the path, the brother being like, "All right, come on, sis." So I'm sis.
Yes, come on, sis.
Right.
We love it.
I love it. We have a family reunion going on, guys.
Yes.
So hey, let's just get it started. So I just want to ask a general question. What are some absurd myths that you guys have heard? Like something that you just want to dispel that seems to be a reoccurring myth that you've heard about charter schools that you want to dispel right now today. So for those who know nothing about charter schools, but only heard, what is something that you think is a myth or misinformation? Let's go with you first, Miss Alicia.
Honey. There's a long list, but I think the ones that I hate the most are that people who support public charter schools want to privatize education, or that we don't support public education. Charter schools are public schools, period. So that's first and foremost. If people don't know anything else, if you didn't hear anything that we said for the next hour, know that charter schools are public schools. Secondly, I will say, and I'll leave some for the others because there are so many, we tend to believe that the charter schools that are in New York or Ohio or Arizona are the same in Georgia. Every state has their own laws, their own way of administering how charter schools are run. And so don't come here talking about what happened in New York and what they do in Texas. Georgia has very strong laws in the charter space, high levels of accountability. And I take it very personally because I helped to pass some of those laws. And we don't put up with some of the stuff, frankly, that other states allow in public charter schools.
All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. Rashawn, let's go in order. You're next. What are some myths you've heard, sir?
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of what Alicia was saying and dig a little deeper. One of the things that I hear a lot of is that charter schools are private, or they're run by private companies. And like Alicia said, Georgia is so unique. There are about almost 100 charter schools in the state of Georgia. Only about 10% of those are contracted with a for-profit management organization. And that just means that they help them with their operations. There are no private or private-owned charter schools in this country at all. What that means is that just like how a school can decide to buy books from Houghton Mifflin, a charter can contract with a management organization. But Georgia is so unique in that only about 10% of charters, Torrey School not being one of them, just want to make sure that is out there, schools that are contracting with a management organization. And that's really important to say, because that is such a big thing that is said about charter schools. And it takes away, I think, from Alicia's point, that charter schools are public schools and they can make that decision if they want, but that's not a common thing here in Georgia.
All right, thank you, sir. Sounds like it's a reoccurring theme. All right, Ms. Torrey, what are some myths that you wish that you could just dispel that you've heard over and over about charter schools?
That there is a selective admissions process, that there's some magic formula to enroll, and it is completely false. We have a lottery because we're limited by the number of seats we can provide. And all families have to do is provide a name, an address, and a date of birth. And so there is not testing, there is not, secret codes. We are serving the same children that are being served in your local neighborhood school.
Can I say one quick thing too?
Yes, ma'am.
I also find it interesting. And again, there are lots of myths. We could have this conversation for an hour by itself. But I always think it's funny when, and I'm not throwing shade or throwing anybody under the bus, but I want to illustrate what we're talking about here. As much as we talk about these are public schools, I often get phone calls from people asking me if I could call a school leader and get their kid in their school. These are public schools. And so none of us can make a phone call to anybody and get your kid into a charter school because they're in a lottery. It's a public school. And so you're not allowed to break rules, bend rules, call in favors. We cannot do any of those things. So when we say it's public, we really mean it's public.
I'm definitely glad that you made notice to that, because a lot of people do think that they can call in favors and slide them right on in. And, that just goes against the rules of what a charter school is versus them being a public school. I guess another question, a follow-up question I have is, people get it confused that charter schools are public schools, and they say that charter schools take away from the public funding. Can one of you explain how a kid has like a number on them as far as like how much they're worth to go from school to school? And if they were to transfer schools, does that money stay with the kid or does it go with the kid to another school?
Yeah, I can take that one. So the way I like to explain charter schools, if you've got, let me back up. So in 2009, I passed a law in Georgia when I was in the legislature, House Bill 251, that allows parents to choose a public school within your district. So if you're zoned to go to Kemp Elementary, but instead you want to go to Searcy Elementary and it's all in Cobb County, you can apply for a 251 transfer and go, as long as there's space. Going to a charter school is very similar. And so if that charter school is within the attendance zone that you live in, so if it's in Atlanta Public Schools, if it's a locally authorized, or if it's a state authorized, it may have a larger attendance zone, your child is eligible to go to that school. And so I think, and Torrey, correct me if I'm wrong, the average per pupil funding right now is about $10,000. And so if you go to a state charter school, you're going to get $10,000 per student. If you go to Kemp Elementary, you're going to get $10,000 per student on average. Sometimes the number is different because it depends on what district you're in. APS, again, as an example, has about a $16,000 per pupil funding, not charter schools, traditional public schools. And so to your point, Ken, so if I decide this year I want to go to Kemp Elementary and next year I want to go to Resurgence Hall, that $10,000 is going to follow me to that public school. So all of these are public dollars. Now, it's a little bit more complicated in terms of how the state budget works and when the kids get counted and all of that. But generally speaking, it is important to know that because these are public schools, they're public dollars and the money follows the child.
Thank you for that clarification. Again, the money follows the child, right? And so that's very important for parents to understand that and to know. So our second question really goes towards Tori. Why is innovation important for charter schools? Like, why is that such a big thing for charter schools?
Well, here's the thing, right? If you think back to when all of us were in grade school, I'm not going to call out any years. I'm not putting anyone's age on blast, but things have completely shifted. And so if we are truly equipping children, right, for the future we don't know, you have to constantly be willing to innovate. And when I think about Georgia charters specifically, they're places of incubation. I'll speak to Resurgence Hall in particular. So Resurgence Hall began with computer science as core curriculum in kindergarten. We were the first public elementary school in the entire state of Georgia to implement computer science as core curriculum. If you look today, 2023, we now have state standards for computer science education. And while those state standards and requirements haven't yet trickled down to kindergarten, I'd like to think that we were part of that innovation, and that really this is a skill set we should be introducing children to at 5. I quite often say to families, take any 2-year-old. They know how to work a phone. You can see them in restaurants, outside, give them a tablet, a phone, and they're fully engaged. So let's equip them at an early age to create those apps and programming. And so we need to really value what's possible when we allow these places of incubation to happen, because they essentially benefit us all.
Thank you. And so I guess for Alicia and Rashawn, since you both have Ivy Girls Prep in common, shout out to Ivy. What is their innovation that's different from a Tory school or another charter school? What would be their innovation skill set?
Yeah, so Ivy is really unique, and it's the first all-girls charter school in the state of Georgia. Actually, they were the impetus for the need for the bill that Alicia passed, just coincidentally, and then Alicia ended up leading the school. So Ivy was a leader in really, even Tory school being in existence. And so Ivy was always known as a school, like Alicia mentioned earlier, with the little girls in the green jackets. So for one, charter schools, can require uniforms. But Ivy being an all-girls school, it is a school that is singularly focused on educating girls. And so what that means is lifting some of the stigmas that happen in classrooms when it comes to girls feeling liberated and being willing to be engaged and taking charge and owning their education. And so, there are lots of schools now across the country and even in the state that are single-sex schools. But Ivy was the first here in the state that's a single-sex school, all for girls.
And I'll just add, someone in the comments just said one of the myths is that charters don't follow state standards. And they certainly do. It may look different, and that's one of the innovations. And so the standards are the same, but the curriculum may be different. So whether it's computer science or it's, Liberation Academy, which is a new school that's coming on. So there's, more of a focus on Afrocentric curriculum. When I was superintendent at Ivy, we did a number of things innovatively, everything from changing the way we hired teachers to having what I loved, professional development Wednesdays. So every Wednesday, not only did the scholars have on pink shirts, which was one of my favorites, but we also brought people in from the community to teach them things like public speaking and college readiness, how to write a resume, all those kinds of skills that we wanted our girls to have. And at the same time, teachers were participating in professional development. So when you have charters, you're able to do things in an innovative way, think outside the box. And as Tori mentioned, you really are changing the game in terms of how education gets delivered. And it has always been the hope and the history of charter schools that you work in tandem with the traditional publics to grow and teach together. One example that I'll give is in Denver. Their traditional and their charters work very closely together. They do principal pipeline programs together. So these are the kinds of innovative things that can happen when there's a presence of charter schools within the public school sector.
All right, thank you. Right now, we're gonna shift the conversation a little bit. Tori, you hit on some of the topics that we're about to discuss, but we want to go ahead and dive into admissions, right? There's a lot of myths, there's a lot of things that people have to say about admissions. So maybe Rashawn, do you mind sharing a little bit more about the lottery? What is the lottery and how does it work?
Yeah, so this is a really big misunderstanding in charter schools. As Tori mentioned, charter schools only get very basic information about students when they apply. And that is so that there is no, selecting or no, disregarding students because of their educational experience or maybe disabilities or even like discipline issues. So all charters get is like a name, their age so that they know what grade they're supposed to be in, and their address so that they know that they can accept the student. Because if I am a locally approved school, I can only accept students in my district. Or if I serve, multiple counties, I can only accept students that are in those counties in which my charter, hence the word charter school, it allows me to serve. And so if I have 500 spaces and 505 students apply, all 505 students get put in the lottery. It's not that the 500 that got in and then the 5 that weren't a part of the first 500 get put in the lottery. Every single student gets the same exact shot. And when we say lottery, it is very much a lottery. Some schools do physical lotteries in their buildings where they have balls and they draw names out. But for example, if I have space for 500 and 460 apply, all 460 of those students are going to get in so long as they live in the district and they are within the grade span that I serve. So that is the only way that students can get into lotteries. And it's really, really important to stress what Alicia said. No matter who you know, or no matter who has worked on passing legislation or works at the school, like I can't just call Tori and say, hey, I have a friend that lives over in South Fulton. They want their kid in Resurgence Hall. You just can't do that. That's against the law. And it would discourage people from having faith in the system if that was something that happened. So that's not something that happens in the public charter school space. And it's all about, applying on time and also the space that the school has in order to serve the students.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is, even though you're my cousin, my brother, and my auntie, I can't call and get any favors, right? Okay,
Right.
We got it.
Yeah. Don't do it.
So
I'm not going to jail for nobody. Okay.
Exactly. So the lottery system, and in particular, when folks are waitlisted, sometimes that can cause a lot of anxiety. So can you guys kind of speak to what happens when students are waitlisted and how parents and different ones should just, conduct themselves like while on the wait list? And that can go to anyone.
Sure, I'll speak to it. So typically within charters, you have movement on the wait list. And so we communicate to families, just stay in touch, right? We utilize an electronic lottery system. So it's wonderful because it kind of auto pings people. It gives you real-time updates. But again, there's no special action you can take to shift your place there. I mean, as Rashawn said, this is law, right? And not only is it law, but we're about equity, and we want anyone who wants the opportunity to have an equal opportunity to access the education we're providing. I think the challenge for charters is the number of folks on wait lists. And so we really have to pay attention to the fact that our Georgia families are seeking choice. And how can we meet that call through expansion so that we're not left with, 500, 600 families who are eager for a choice option, and we're not able to meet it due to capacity constraints.
Yeah, so later on in our time together, we're going to be highlighting some charter schools that are going to be opening up later on this fall. And so charter families that are interested in learning more about what their options are in their area, you guys will hear more about that soon. I also see some questions in the chat about governance and accountability, and promise you we're going to get to that as well. But let's talk about what happens when the students are admitted. Another myth is around discipline. So is there a difference between how charter schools and traditional public schools handle discipline and expulsion in particular?
Madam School Leader, you want to answer that?
I mean, we're bound by the same, we're public school. Charters are public schools. When it comes to tribunals and due process and limitations on suspension, it's no different than your neighborhood school. What I think, is one of the many beautiful things about charter is that school culture. And so you have schools that are built around very specific values and characteristics, and families can opt into schools that are aligned perhaps with their own family values. And within a culture that they believe is best suited for their child to thrive in. Again, really, folks, what we're talking about is just choice. All of us have choice of which Publix we shop at, which racetrack we get gas at. Why are we not offering the same choice when it comes to educating our most precious gift?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So let's shift the conversation a little bit. I think I saw this in the chat around students with special needs. I have a son that has special needs, and I know that's a huge concern for a lot of parents. I'll just ask it plainly. Do charter schools serve students with special needs?
They better.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because, again, they are public schools, they have to. And Rashawn and Tori both mentioned this, that even in and I don't even like using the word application, because it makes you feel like there's some hoop you got to jump through to get into this school, and you really don't, other than living in the district and being in the grade span. But during the process of choosing a charter, schools cannot look at your academic record. They can't ask for your IEP. They can't ask for your discipline record, nothing, until you are in the school. And then once they get it, they can't put you out, because now all of a sudden they've seen that you've been suspended 3 times. In fact, I remember when I was at Ivy, we would get a number of students who would be suspended from other schools in previous years. And it was just a better environment for them at Ivy. And so when it comes to special needs, it's the same thing. I have a daughter who also has an IEP. She attended Ivy Prep. So I would go to those IEP meetings as a mama, not as the superintendent. And so it's important to know that our responsibility is to educate all children. I do think it's important to note that there are now charter schools that specialize in working with children who have IEPs, who have certain special needs. And so that is wonderful, because if we're really honest, there are not a lot of public schools, I don't care if you're talking charter or traditional, that do special education well. It's a struggle for all public schools because of the resources and all that it takes. But there are some that are online now that give parents more options. But I want parents to know, who are watching, if your child attends a charter school and they are not being served, they are responsible for serving your child no matter what the disability is. And that's for any public school. But do not think for any reason that because they go to a charter that all of a sudden charters get to do something different. We are responsible for educating every child that walks into that door that attends our schools. And we need to make sure as parents that we advocate for our children and make sure that our kids get everything that they need, regardless of the kind of school they attend.
Before we shift to teacher credentials, which is something I know that comes up often, I'd love to address a question in the chat, and I'm going to throw this one to Rashawn. Rashawn, what happens if a family doesn't have a charter school in their area? I think this would be a great opportunity to highlight local charter schools or district charter schools as opposed to state charters. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so in Georgia, there are two ways that a charter can be opened. It can be opened by a school district, so for example, Atlanta Public Schools can approve a charter, and that charter can serve students in APS only. Or a charter can be opened by going to the State Charter Schools Commission, which was created by that law that Alicia mentioned earlier. And so those schools can either serve a particular district, they can serve multiple districts, or they can have what's called a statewide attendance zone, meaning they can take students from anywhere, with the idea that if a parent lives in Douglas County, but they work in Gwinnett County, that student could still go to that school in Gwinnett County because they serve a statewide attendance zone. One thing I want to kind of piggyback on is what Tori was speaking about, the wait list. One thing I was blown away by reading a recent op-ed by Tony Roberts at the Georgia Charter Schools Association is that 14,000 students are on the wait list across the state of Georgia for charter schools. And that just shows, to Tori's point, that there is a need, and there are communities, sadly, that don't have options, meaning that your school choice is only the school that your zip code has been assigned to go to. But one thing people can do is to work with people in their community, work with educational leaders to start a school. They can reach out to people like Tori and say, hey, we want you to expand over into Cobb County because you're now in South Fulton. But there's lots of different options. I know Tori and school leaders, especially school leaders of color, get that pressure all the time to expand schools, but that's some of the options that they have. There are virtual schools in the state of Georgia, but I know that may not be for everyone. So that's some of the options that they do have. And also being mindful that there may be schools that are maybe further away that your student could be able to go to that is not necessarily in your area, but they may serve a statewide attendance zone so they could get in.
All right, thank you, Rashawn. All right, so I'm going to ask two questions. The first question, I'd like a quick answer, and then so that we can have a little bit more time for the second question, okay? Is there a difference between the qualifications of traditional public school teachers and charter school teachers? What's the differences between what we may classify as highly qualified in those two spaces? Alicia, I'm gonna throw it to you because I think you touched on this a little bit about your hiring practices earlier.
Yeah, and I also heard that short answer, and I know that was directed to me, so let me work on that. The shortest answer I can give you is that generally speaking, charter schools have certified teachers. They look for certified teachers. I'm going to say, though, that I like looking for highly effective teachers. Sometimes they are certified, sometimes they are not. I will tell you, when I was superintendent across the 3 schools, our teachers that were not certified happened to be the most effective. And so that's a whole different conversation within the public education sector about what we want in terms of a quote unquote qualified teacher and what we want in terms of effective teachers.
Thank you. And that was not thrown towards you. That was to
okay.
Everybody. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So a lot of the conversation thus far has really been geared towards parents, but I want to put our attention on teachers. What questions should an educator ask when interviewing for a position at a charter school? A lot of times there's a lot of different experiences that teachers have. So what questions should they be asking before they sign that contract?
Great question.
I'll tackle that one. So really what you're looking for is you're looking for alignment between your own personal values and purpose and the school's mission and purpose. at Resurgence Hall, I loved that question before when it comes to teacher qualifications. What I would name as one of our most important questions is, do you believe all children can learn? And believe it or not, we have some folks who are like, well, some, but at Resurgence Hall, we are like, no, we are all about 100%. And so I think for educators, it's about aligning personal values with organizational values. It's about aligning your own professional goals and development with what the organization is offering. And quite honestly, what I would recommend for educators, aspiring educators, is get in the school. There's nothing more powerful than standing in the space and hearing and seeing the culture and identifying with like, this is my jam, or this is not, not matching what I'm looking for. And I think also, just to go back to the qualifications, the beauty of charters is that there isn't an arbitrary, you must check boxes before you can come in. You'll see a lot of charters looking more so for alignment in different areas outside of a piece of paper. And as Alicia said, there's no correlation to certification and student outcomes. And so until that data exists, which it doesn't, charters can really innovate in attracting team members who match the mission of the organization.
Thank you so much for that, Tori. Okay, as we transition to the next question, I've seen it earlier.
1 second, Ken, if I could just mention one thing, I'm sorry.
No,
I think what we also want to make sure that teachers are asking when they're interviewing for jobs at charter schools are some of the governance type questions. And I think you would appreciate that being added to this conversation. Mm-hmm. You do want to know, how long is your charter? When is it up for renewal?
Yeah.
Where are we in the process of renewal? In terms of the accountability, which I know we'll talk about, what your score is looking like. Because if you are entering a school in its last year of its charter, it's not looking good, you're probably not going to have a job the next year. So you should ask those questions when you're interviewing about where they are in the process. Ask about the board, how involved they are, how responsible they are, how accountable they are. Those things are very important. You may not ask those questions in a traditional setting because maybe there are 50 schools. But if you're talking about one school with one governing board, one charter, you want to ask those questions so that you'll understand what you're getting into.
Thank you so much for that, Alicia. Again, part of me and Anastasia's conversation and how this came about was because it's questions that, that we felt like we didn't even know what to ask during our interview, right? And it was one of those things where it sort of, hit us later on in our professions where it's like, oh, well, maybe we should have answered or asked those particular questions. So I think any teachers out there that's either in a charter school right now or looking to go into a charter school, those are imperative questions that you should ask from both Tori and Alicia. And so we brought up accountability, and there are myths that charter schools, they really don't have to follow the state standards. They're innovative, but does it work? Are there any accountability with them as far as academic outcomes, Rashawn, as far as charter schools, and how are they held accountable? Sometimes unlike traditional public schools.
Yeah, Alicia alluded to this, and this is like a really, really important difference between traditional schools and public charter schools, in that charter schools are held to a heightened sense of accountability, meaning there are requirements in their charter. When I say charter, I'm talking about the contract that they have with either the district or the state that says, look, these are the academic outcomes that you have to meet. And if you don't meet them over the span of this agreement, typically, which is about 5 years, your school could be closed. And so that's why it's really important for teachers, for parents to ask these questions and know these things about their schools before they enroll their student, or even before you sign on that line to sign that contract, because you want to make sure that you have a job in a year or two. And honestly, a lot of the times, usually a charter school is closed, not because academics. Sadly, it's usually closed because of financials or because of poor governance. And so those are questions you actually want to ask like Alicia and Tori were mentioning. But in addition to the governance questions, looking to see what their financials are. Those are public documents that schools have to post online because you want to know that that school is solid, that you're going to be working at, that you're going to be sending your child to. But that accountability is a real thing. There are schools that are closed because they don't meet the accountability measures that are in their charter. And that's the kind of give and take that charter schools make when they people are opening schools. They're saying we want to be creative. We want to have schools that are founded and led by people that look like the students that are going to be served. But with that exchange, we're going to have a heightened sense of accountability. And if we don't meet the requirements, we could face the potential of being closed.
So let me ask you, Rashawn and Alicia, I know you both said you had kids that went to charter schools, right? How, as parents, how do you hold the board account? Like, how do you hold the school accountable to ensure that they are doing what they're supposed to do, as far as, you know, how they're spending money or maybe some academic things that they're doing throughout the school? How do parents become more involved in their child's academic career in charter school setting?
I think it's going to the board meetings. Which, just like the school board meeting in a traditional district, they're open to the public. They have to be held accountable, you know, showing the budget, public meetings, all of those things. And so going and being involved, asking questions, talking to the school leaders about, you know, where the school stands. There was a question in the chat I saw about CCRPI, the College and Career Ready Performance Index. That's the measure that every single public school in Georgia, charter or traditional, is held accountable by. And so you can look up the CCRPI score of any charter school, any traditional public school, and that'll tell you a lot about its academics, operational, and financial operations. So please take the time to do that. And if you see that there are scores that are concerning to you, as a parent, you should absolutely ask those questions and find out what the plan is to address those issues if there are any.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add on to that, just making sure that it is a school that aligns with the values that you believe in, or that you feel would be the right environment for your child to learn in. So just personally speaking, like our son was going to a school that on paper CCRPI score was actually higher than the school that we moved him to, but we really were drawn to the Afrocentric and the uplifting of his culture that happened in that school that we felt was a missing piece and something that was really important for him. And so that's why we enrolled him in the school. And thank God, like he's got a full ride scholarship to an HBCU now. And I really think it's because of that culture that was created in that school that exposed them to so many HBCUs. And, you may not get that at all schools. And so it's really important to have that true feel of what that mission is about, going back to what Tori was saying earlier, even for parents, and making sure that that school is holding true to that mission. So as a parent, there's no better thing, like Tori was saying, to go physically in a school and see what it's about. Because sometimes, we talk about the good, bad, and ugly. Sometimes things can be on a website one way, and then when you go into school, it's a totally different thing. And so I just want to call that out as well.
Thank you so much, Rashawn. And so I know we've been talking about board governance for a while, right? That's been popping up here and there. I would like to get your three perspectives, because all three of y'all have served on a board, or Tori, you as the ED still have to work with the board, right? What does a strong board look like? And what does that mean for the success of a charter school? You can go first, Tori, if you would like.
I think there's a lot of power of having a board that represents the community. Resurgence Hall is really proud to have a board where I would say all but one born, raised, educated in Atlanta. We have board members who identify with some of the challenges that are part of being a historically under-resourced community. And there's this personal piece of, when I see our children, I see myself, that I think we can't dismiss. And so again, I do think that's part of the uniqueness of Georgia, that our schools are what I like to call mom and pop community-based schools. But I think that's part of our secret sauce and what makes us special.
Thank you. I know, Rashawn, you are right now the current chair of Ivy, right? And so how did you come into that position, and what does a strong board for you looks like to make Ivy a success?
Yeah, one thing that makes charter school boards unique is that it's 100% voluntary. So no one that serves on a charter school board gets paid for this work. It's really like another part-time job, but you really have to be sold into the mission of the school and really believe in the work that's being done. And so that's what really drew me to Ivy, having had the history that it had, knowing the founder, Dr. Gilbert, knowing Alicia, who succeeded her, and even Dr. Nichols, who is there now. And in addition to that, like seeing the impact that it has on the children is really important, on the scholars that we like to call them. And I see one of my fellow board members actually in here now. In addition to that, you have to be committed to be a board member. So many people don't know that in the state of Georgia, to serve on a charter school board, you're required by law every single year to get 12 hours of training to ensure that you know what you're doing and the questions that you should be asking to hold school leaders like Tori accountable. Like, yes, Tori's amazing, but everybody can grow. Everybody should be pushed and prodded to ensure that what is happening in the school is to the best interest of all the children that are there. And so that's what good board members do. They ask questions about academics, they ask questions about operations, and they ask questions about finance. And also they bring in resources to the school, whether it be financial or bringing in support and things like that. But always being that critical eye, I think, is so important when you have amazing school leaders that also need support as well.
Thank you. Alicia, would you like to add on to that, ma'am?
Yeah, another topic that I could talk about for decades. When I was superintendent, I had 3 different boards the 3 years that I was at Ivy. And there's a tremendous difference between boards that are supportive of the ED or the superintendent. You're aligned in terms of the vision and what you want to see for the school or schools. And then when there's a board that may be micromanaging, they want to get into the day-to-day operations instead of governance. And I will also say, because we said we talk about the good, bad, and the ugly. One of the most difficult parts of my job when I got to Ivy was trying to deal with some of the decisions that the previous boards had made. As one example, the building that the school now is down to 1 school, but at the time there were 3, a $14 million bond that no matter who the executive director or superintendent was going to be for the next 10 years, that bond was going to be stuck with that school. And when I got there, we had a $127,000 bond payment per month. And so you do the math, Tori, you could hire 3 teachers every month for that, right? So it wasn't the folks that I had started working with who selected me to be the superintendent. It was previous boards that had made those decisions. And so whoever the leadership is after that, I hate to use this word, but is stuck with some of the decisions that boards make. And so in terms of responsibilities, these are people who are fiscally responsible for millions of dollars. And I can understand that, you want to have a building. Facilities is a major issue for charter schools. But those things are important to note when you're signing up to be on a board. What are some of the characteristics? You need somebody who's great in finance, someone who knows academics as well. Again, not to run the schools, but to understand, to know the questions to ask that Rashawn talked about. That alignment is very, very important. Having a good relationship with whoever the authorizer is, those things are important. And all the things that were mentioned, people who love the community, who love children, who have resources they can bring to the table. But we cannot lose the point that who the people are that serve on these boards need to understand their fiscal responsibility, and that the decisions that they make today can have an impact on the school and those children being served for decades. And that is very critical. And so having that training, having the right kind of people serving on boards is absolutely pivotal.
And it sounds like the right kind of people are those who are truly invested and not trying to build a resume that, hey, I'm on the board, right?
Yes.
It's people who are truly invested in the school, in the community itself. As Tori spoke, that almost all of her board members are from the Atlanta area. So I think that's very important to know that they should have a true investment within the school itself.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
So good. So good. So kind of in the spirit of the conversation that we're having now, we want to pivot to community engagement. What is and I'd love to hear from each of you, what is the importance of community engagement? And what are the best ways for community members, whether they are a parent or a teacher or a student or not, to support the work of charter schools where they live?
I'm gonna let y'all go first because I keep talking too much. Now, come on.
Sure, I'll go. I mean, again, I just have to highlight what I believe is the secret sauce of Georgia. Charters are community schools. Unlike other states where you may see these, large networks, and perhaps that works for that region, Georgia is made up of folks in the community who are just looking for a choice option to meet what they see as the best education for their child. And so when I think about Resurgence Hall in particular, it's not just engagement with folks who have children attend, it's engagement with the city of East Point. We have an incredible mayor who brings together charters and district schools to collaborate. We have local businesses who host family nights for us. We have neighbors who seek out volunteer opportunities. And I think that's the beauty of these community-based charters, is that you don't have to have a child in it to be a part of it. You can invest, right? Knowing that when we all invest in our children, we all just benefit.
So good. Alicia, I know you're ready.
I like that. These are community schools, right? They have an attendance zone for a reason, because you want these to be homegrown schools where, some kids can walk to school, some are, taking the bus, or mom is dropping them off on the way, or whatever their situation is. One of the things that we did at Ivy, I mentioned we had those professional development Wednesdays. So we had people from the community, whether it was members of the clergy or business people who weren't just writing checks. We wanted those too. Hello. But we loved having people in the schools and exposing the girls to those opportunities. Those are the kinds of things that happen at a lot of charter schools. If people can kind of remove the political stuff and the myths about charters and just see our babies as children in schools who are getting an education that we have the opportunity to invest in, support, love on. I would argue that getting into a charter school to be a volunteer, to offer your resources, is probably a lot easier than getting into a traditional public school where you have to go through a whole lot of red tape. And so for those who are interested, go and volunteer, share your talent and your skills. School leaders will be happy to accept those resources, because that's what this is about. It's about the babies. It's about what we can do to support them. And it's about making sure that these schools are strong and truly members of the community.
So good.
Yeah. Just, share that, one of the things that make charter schools unique is the innovation. And so there are a lot of times programs that charter schools put on that they need people in the community to be able to be engaged with. For example, at Ivy, they just recently had a wearable art fashion show where the students had to create fashion by art. And so they had local artists come in and work with the students to be able to create the artwork, and then also local entrepreneurs to come in and judge. And so things like that, it's important for students to be able to see like what can be And so to Alicia's point about the red tape, a lot of that red tape is kind of cut down because you're working with a much smaller group in terms of the leadership and the, educators to be able to engage and work with the students. I mean, of course, still, doing the security and things that any traditional school would do, but there are unique things that are done, like career days and like even more beyond that are so important that we have representation from our communities in the schools. And obviously, of course, supporting and giving money is always helpful because it is a unique challenge that charters have with facilities. We won't go into the details in terms of the disparities, but there's a lot of making up that charter schools have to do. And so local support really helps to offset some of that.
That's so good. We actually have a couple of questions about funding, but before we do that, Tori, I know you have to head off to another engagement. So we just want to say thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that you want to share about Resurgence, how to get in contact with you or the school before you sign off?
Well, this has felt like a family gathering. And so I just really want to thank my co-panelists for the opportunity to come together. And just a reminder that we are all here in service of providing choice to all families, regardless of zip code, income level. All children deserve an excellent education. Resurgence Hall has an open door. We are open to sharing more about our school or just quite honestly supporting families and navigating choice. And so thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ken, for having me here. And let's continue to just advocate for the choice that all of our children in Georgia deserve.
So good.
Thank you so much, Tori.
Keep up the good work, Tori.
Yes. We'll see you next time. Okay, so Rashawn, you kind of alluded to this. Is there a difference in how charter schools and traditional public schools are funded? If so, what's the difference and what is the impact of those differences?
Yeah, so I saw a question just pop up, and so I'm going to dispel that myth that vouchers have nothing to do with charter schools. So charter schools are not private schools. That has no impact or no relationship whatsoever. So I just wanted to make sure I touched on that. And then, we've touched on kind of how schools are funded. So if you're a locally approved charter school, you get funding streams from 3 different places. You get state dollars, which everybody in the state gets. You get local tax dollars, and then you get federal dollars from the federal government for education. If you're a state approved charter school, you don't get the local tax dollars. And so to get too in the weeds, there's a supplement that charter schools that are approved at the state level get to kind of offset and kind of bring them up, because at the end of the day, we're all talking about kids. And that's part of the challenge with education, period, is that all students should be able to get whatever funding is necessary to give them a quality education. Unfortunately, because we're dealing with tax dollars, you have to figure out some sort of way to allocate that. But at the end of the day, it's about what money is necessary to educate and give that kid a quality education. That is the most important conversation that we, should be having in education. But that is, the unique difference between a locally approved charter school and a state approved charter school. But in Georgia, like over 50% of the schools are approved at the local level, and a little less than 50% are approved at the state level.
That's helpful. And we all know that funding and policy are deeply connected, are near impossible to separate. And in the state of Georgia, at least, it seems that support for charter school tends to lean in the direction of Republicans, and not support for charter school tends to lean in the direction of Democrats. So I want Alicia specifically to speak to folks who consider themselves or identify as Democrats. Why should they support charter schools?
I like that question. I want to make a distinction, though. Democrats do support charter schools.
Exactly.
The national data, and it's the same in Georgia, 70% of Black parents, and we know that Black folks are mostly Democrats, support charter schools. The Democrats who don't support charters, I would say, are about 10 or 15 people who are at the higher echelons of the party structure, who frankly don't understand what charter schools are. I mentioned earlier, folks like to compare what happens in New York and other places. We are not the same. The things that happen in New York with charter schools do not happen in Georgia. And so people like to come with this national conversation and they're anti-charter. But when you hear that there are 14,000 kids on a waiting list to go to a charter school, somebody supports them. And so it's important to note that support for charter schools is actually a bipartisan thing. I want to throw out a couple of other numbers because this is really, really important. When we did the charter amendment in 2012, the districts that had the highest support for the charter amendment were Clayton County, DeKalb County, Chatham County. Those are the most Democratic counties in our state. Why did they support them higher than anybody else? Probably because they want more choices in their area. And so it is a misnomer. And I know you put it that way because that's what the myth is. Mm-hmm. It is a misnomer that Republicans support charters and Democrats don't. It is a highly bipartisan issue. The problem is the politics. And so there's this perception, and again, a handful of people, and Rashawn knows this from running for office, when you talk to regular parents, they don't care what the school is called. They just want a good school that works for their kids. But when you go to maybe a Democratic Party meeting, and you have people who are highly, highly active in politics, they've been in a meeting or two and somebody told them that a charter school is a private school and it's a voucher and all, and they couldn't explain it very well, but they know they're not supposed to like it. And I'm saying that because I used to be that person. I grew up in the NAACP. I was taught, don't like charters, don't like vouchers. I didn't even know what it was, but I knew I wasn't supposed to like it. But then when you become a parent and you're trying to navigate what works best for my child, the world opens up and you realize that you got to put this politics aside. And you have to do what's best for children. And so one of the things that I hope will come out of this conversation is that everybody who's watching will take this information back. And when you hear people say things like charters aren't public schools, or y'all are trying to privatize education, or you trying to be, hang out with the Republicans, none of those things are true. We are trying to give parents an option. We are trying to make sure that all kids, especially the ones that look like the ones on this panel, have access to a high quality education and that their zip code doesn't determine their future.
100%. And, to magnify what Alicia was saying, 70% of the students in charter schools in Georgia are students of color. So, I think back to like, if I were younger, if charter schools were around when I was little, I likely would have went to a charter school. I was one of those kids whose mom lied about my address so that I could go to a better school. Mm-hmm. And so that is one thing that we need to address, is why do parents have to be put in situations like this to make decisions where, like in Ohio, a mom was put in jail for doing that, for using her dad's address. She was put in jail for that. And so why are we, by politics, putting parents in situations like that, when at the end of the day, all we want to do is have a great school for our kid, knowing that our zip code, that those 5 digits, should not dictate where one child is educated when maybe another child in my home is not best suited for that school. And so we really have to take the politics out of it. But, I do have to call out the fact that President Obama was a strong supporter of charter schools. Things have changed, unfortunately, under the current administration. But one thing I think that we in the charter school space need to do a better job of is highlighting people like Tori that are doing amazing work, that has the highest rated school south of I-20 in the Atlanta area. I mean, that's huge to have a sister doing that. And not enough people hear about those things. Unfortunately, it's usually the larger networks that get attention. And, if we must be honest, it's, a lot of times the white-led school leaders that are, put on national platforms, when people like Tori should be the ones that we're lifting up, because they're unlocking opportunities for kids that look like us.
I think you both made amazing points, especially you, Alicia, stating that, it's the lack of knowledge or education that's why people really don't support it. And so I think we need more spaces like this to get out there so we can educate, teachers, stakeholders, kids, parents. And also, as you stated, Rashawn, we need to highlight, schools like Torrey, being a woman of color and being able to be successful, and the only A+ school under, I-20, which is, that's a hard thing to do. I know us with our child, we don't have that many options as far as, good schools in the area. And so we would be in the lottery with Torrey because we would want Brooklyn to go to Resurgence because their school is doing amazing. And so I think that it's very important to keep aware of that. We as a whole need to make sure that we spotlight these schools that are doing well and that we educate people about what charter schools means and how they can benefit, especially kids of color. So thank you so much for joining us this night. We don't want to hold you any longer, but we are very thankful for your time and service of giving the nuggets that you guys have given, because you gave nothing but facts, wearing the many hats that you guys do wear or have worn in the past. And so we just want to say thank you. Are there any parting words that you guys have before you leave?
No, I just want to say thank you. I'm excited for what's coming next because they're the reason why we do the work that we do. I know you're going to highlight some amazing school leaders that are opening schools in the fall. So I'm just super excited about that because the work that Alicia and I are doing is to support them and make sure that we have more of them in the pipeline. So just thank y'all for putting this on.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for having this conversation, for having us. Clearly, there's lots more to talk about. So when you have part 2, I want to come back. And thank you for bringing on these leaders too. You all have said this, and even when I think about Torrey's work, one of the things that we didn't talk about is how hard it is to lead charter schools. The financial challenges, the higher accountability, those are hard things to overcome. And so for her to have the highest performing school, again, reminding our audience, these are not kids who are handpicked. These are kids who are coming in 3 years behind because of COVID. She's still outperforming, still doing incredible work. These are the folks that you need to know, understand what's happening. Other school leaders within the traditional system need to be going to her school to see what she's doing. So I'm excited. And this is why we get up every day, because I don't care what type of school a kid goes to. I just want schools that work for all of our babies. And so I'm excited. I'm grateful. I'm inspired. Let's keep these conversations going because I believe that the people who are watching, who are listening, I think they learned a lot today. They're going to use this information, to share with others so that Rashawn and I don't have to keep having targets on our back for simply doing what we believe is best for children.
Thank you so much, you two. So now we're about to transition to the end of this town hall. We have 2 schools that are opening up in fall of 2023. But before we introduce them, do not forget that we have a link, a survey that we would like for you guys to fill out. This is to, ensure that what me and Anastasia are doing is a need and that you guys are enjoying what you see. And so we want you guys to do the survey. Again, if you fill out the survey, you will be entered into a lottery where you can win a $50 gift card. So make sure you fill out the survey that is up on the board right now. But we would like to introduce Monique, who is the founder and leader of Zest Prep. So can we enter? Hello, Monique. How are you?
Hi, Monique.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for having me.
Of course. And so as the theme of this town hall has been the truth about charters, we definitely wanted to highlight charter schools that are starting up in 2023. As our panelists stated before, there are over 14,000 kids that's on the wait list, right? And so it's great to know that we have, people like yourself who has taken the ball to start your own charter school, because I'm pretty sure that wasn't an easy feat, right? And that's for another day. But I wanted to make sure that we put a spotlight on you and your school. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your school as well for those that's listening to the town hall?
Yes, absolutely. And again, thank you so much, Jess, for having me as a part of the panel to be able to share a little bit about myself and Zest Preparatory Academy. So for me, I've been in education for almost 20 years now. This is my 20th year, going into my 21st year. And I tell people I've been a charter school supporter since I was 18 years old. I have served in a number of positions throughout schools. I started as a teacher, third grade teacher with Teach for America. I've served as a school leader. I actually was one of the people who helped open Georgia's first virtual school. And now I've worked at the state level, working in that grants department. And now here I am serving as the founder and executive director of Zest. It has been an amazing journey for me, just being an educator. And I'm so excited to just have the privilege to sit in this seat to help found this school with our community. A little bit about Zest. Zest is Georgia's very first charter school that is focused on leadership and literacy starting in kindergarten. And so that's a really important piece for us, is that we know that our babies need to, one, know how to read. They need to know how to read well. They need to learn how to read early, and they need to be taught to read based on the science. The other thing, the parent in me says that we need to make sure that our children are affirmed daily, and affirmed not only in their identities, but themselves as leaders. So a big part of Zest is to really affirm and help cultivate the leadership in our children very early, so that they know that they deserve a seat at the table. And when they are not given seats at the table, they have the scholarship and the leadership to create their own tables. And at Zest, we do that all in this loving, affirming space that is filled with joy.
Wow, that's amazing, Monique. Leadership and literacy, man, I'm telling you, like, those are two things that our kids definitely, and for them to start in pre-K or kindergarten, that is, I can only imagine how that would change the trajectory of their lives, right? Mm-hmm. And so where are you located, and who do you service? Are you a state charter school, or are you a district? Could you tell us a little bit more about that part?
We are located in Douglas County. We are the third charter school to open in Douglas County. So when I heard you say, like, there are places across Georgia where there are not a lot of options, this Douglas County, West Georgia area is one of those places. And so we're excited to be one of the third charter schools that are opening. Currently, we are open to families that reside in Douglas County. But what I'll tell you is that we have families from Carroll County, from Paulding County, from Cobb, from Fulton, who are all very interested in joining our school, who are sending me the email saying, what can I do to get in? Can you let me into the lottery? So we are hoping that we will be able to expand that attendance zone. And in terms of our grade levels, we are an elementary school. This year, when we open, we will be serving students in kindergarten, first, second, and third, and then we will go to fifth grade. A lot of families have said, will you be a middle school? And what I say to them is, if people keep asking, we will do everything we can to make that a reality.
Well, thank you so much, Monique. Thank you for the work that you're doing, because it is definitely needed, especially with people that look like us, girls that look like you. I know my daughter, I mean, you know, I want her to have someone to look up to as yourself. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and good luck in fall of 2023. And so people, do not forget that this is, you can follow them on any social media. I'm sure you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the.
Yes, we are on Facebook. We are also on Instagram. We are on LinkedIn. Please do follow us. We are still currently enrolling. We are approaching a wait list in a couple of our grade levels. So I have been telling families to enroll now, secure your spot. I will drop our phone number as well as our email and website in the chat for anybody who's interested. We'd love to have your children there. As a parent, I say, it is always very humbling to me, and I take it very serious when families are choosing our school for their greatest gifts. And so as a parent, that I know that I want my children to be loved, to be affirmed, and to be taught in a great space. And we are going to do that for the children who enroll in Zest. So come join us as we blaze these trails of history.
Well, thank you so much. And we look forward to having you back again on our shows very soon.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes. All right, and so next we will have Mr. Brian King to come up. He is actually the founder of Liberation Academy, and I would like for him to give us a little bit of information about himself and about his school as well.
Thank you guys for having me so much. You guys had an awesome panel. I've recognized a lot of the faces up there, and I've worked closely with them, especially Monique. But my name is Brian King. I'm the founder and principal of Liberation Academy Charter School. Will be located in College Park, statewide attendance zone. So even though we're in College Park, we are easy to get to. And if you have a Georgia address, you are more than welcome to attend the school. We'll be serving grades 5 and 6 this first year, and then we'll grow to 8th grade, each one grade level after the first year. A little bit about myself. I have been an English teacher. I started off as an English teacher in College Park at Banneker High School. I've been an instructional coach. I've been a dean of students. I've been an assistant principal. I've been a principal in residence. So I've taken on a few roles through the charter and traditional sector.
I think we may have a technical difficulty right now, Brian.
Well, while Brian is getting squared away, we just want to remind you guys to complete the survey. Remember that we are doing a raffle for $50. If you complete the survey, listen, we want to make sure that we have the best information about you, about what you're interested in. There is more coming down the pipeline. And as we design the experience, we want to do so with you in mind. So complete the survey. The link will be in the chat shortly.
Also, while we're waiting in between, we just want to thank Jason Allen for giving us this platform to have this discussion. He is behind the scenes doing, him and his team, they're behind the scene doing their thing. And we just want to say that we're very grateful and honored that you allowed us to have this very important and much needed conversation on your platform. Also, I do want to say that please save the date on Tuesday, August the 29th at 6:30 p.m. Again, that's Tuesday, August the 29th at 6:30 p.m. As I joined the National Parents Union for their town hall on SEL, right in time for school. Again, that's Tuesday, August 29th at 6:30, and that is in collaboration with the National Parents Union. So there we go, right on time, Mr. Brian.
Okay.
I apologize. My computer decided to do an update really quick. So I apologize for that. But briefly about Liberation Academy, our focus is on cultural affirmation, computer science, and community leadership. We're unapologetic about the fact that through cultural affirmation, we think that research shows that when you put stuff in front of students that looks like them, sounds like them, and just feels familiar to them, they pay attention. And if students are paying attention, that they learn. So we are unapologetic about having a school culture and curriculum that is emblematic of the things that resonate with students. We'll be using problem-based learning, and we'll be one of the only schools in the state that use problem-based learning to help students to learn those skills. Computer science was a key thing to add to the school as well, just because we make up less than 8% of the computer science field. And this is a field that our children can grow up and leave high school and get jobs that pay more than ours right now, right out of high school. So with that, but outside of that, just computer science provides a lot of different skills with creative thinking and team and collaboration. And so as we grow, we'll become a STEAM school, but we thought it was important to incorporate computer science in year one. It will be one of the few schools that offers computer science as a core class to each grade level within our school. So we're happy about that. And also we have a computer science teacher that looks like a lot of our students as well, which I'm excited about. And then community leadership as well. The students will be engaged in community activities and community projects each year. And so through problem-based learning, we are trying to help students to understand that just because they're young doesn't mean that they're not able to cultivate ideas that resonate and that help them to resolve real-world issues. So we're excited about creating a rigorous and relevant environment for the students and becoming a part of the community.
Thank you so much, man. I definitely agree with you. You know, to have people that look like you that's teaching, that would have been a game changer for a lot of us. I mean, for me personally, I didn't have a Black teacher until I was in college. And so to grow up having people that look like me to teach me these things, I think I'd have been more apt to listen and to learn and to want to be like and potentially follow their careers, right? Also, the community leadership piece is very important because we need to raise kids up to be leaders, right? It needs to be something that we emphasize more into. So parents, again, if you're in the area of College Park, listen, you need to look into this school. How can they find you guys on any social media, Brian?
So we're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Liberation Academy ATL. We are, as I said, we're currently enrolling 5th and 6th grade scholars right now. 6th grade has a wait list, but families are moving into the active list as we speak right now. So being on the wait list doesn't have to be a bad thing if you submit an application. 5th grade, we still have some space in 5th grade. So if you're a scholar or parent that's looking to transition into middle school early, we've got space, and we'd love to have you all part of our founding class.
Thank you. And again, the name of his charter school is Liberation Academy. Liberation Academy.
And Liberation Academy is a state charter. So even if you don't live in the area of College Park, you are eligible to apply.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Brian, for your time, and good luck, man, in fall of 2023. And we hope to have you back here very soon.
Definitely. I look forward to being back.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, guys, as we wrap this thing up, we hope that you have been, like they say in the good church, fed with the good word, because we are super excited that we've had an amazing panel, and then we had the 2 amazing schools that opened up in the fall of 23. It's been my pleasure to work with Anastasia, and we hope to continue to do more things like this as we continue to move forward.
Once again, we want to thank you all for tuning in. We know that there's a lot happening on a Wednesday evening, and you guys decided to spend your time with us. Remember to complete the survey. We will be doing the raffle this week, and we'll be letting you know whether or not you won the $50. Stay connected with us because there's more coming down the pipeline from Ken and myself. So you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Shout out to Jason Allen and Educational Entities. Your team was fantastic in hosting this event. We are so excited to come back for part 2. Shout out once again to all of our panelists and to the new schools that are opening up. Hopefully, as a result of this, you guys feel more informed and you have decided to be charter school advocates.
And again, happy Teacher Appreciation to all the teachers out there, and happy Charter School Week. All right, you guys have an amazing Wednesday. Take care.
Take care.